What is the difference between grace and mercy? Well, the two don't really mean the same thing at all, but they are very much connected to what it is that God provides to us so that we can do His will in all things. And this can become a very heady question, and I can be a very heady person if I'm not careful. So I'm going to try to avoid that as much as I can. So let's talk about what grace is. Grace, in and of itself, is basically a gift that God gives us that is undeserved, that helps us to do the right thing. It's not really like pixie dust. It's not exactly like a force, like in Star Wars or something like that, but sometimes it can come across that way. Sometimes we can feel that we have an inner strength to do something that we normally wouldn't have. That's definitely God's grace. And we know that St. Paul speaks a great deal about the importance of grace. You know, we're told in the Scriptures that without grace, we can do nothing. Without God's grace, we can do nothing good. That's where the phrase, "by the grace of God I go," comes from. It's only God's grace that enables us to do what is right. This gets tricky because God gives us free will, and we are capable of choosing right and wrong. But we cannot choose right without God's help first. That doesn't necessarily make sense to a lot of us. It's one of the great mysteries. How can it be that I'm choosing if God's the one who's allowing me to choose? And I think it's rooted in the fact that we're made like God. We are His creatures. And so it's the grace that He instills in us and provides to us that allows us to do what He wants us to do. But it's still our choice. We have to choose to cooperate with that grace. God is always giving us grace to do what is right. It's then we have to choose, we have to cooperate, we have to accept it, embrace it, and then do what is right. So that's a kind of blanket statement. There's a lot that God gives us grace to do. Mercy, on the other hand, is perhaps a specific kind of grace that God gives to us. Mercy is what is provided to the person who has sinned, who has offended, so that the relationship can be re-established. Anytime we have a relationship and we sin against that person, there is a rupture in the relationship. And the only thing that allows that relationship to be rebuilt is when one person says, "I'm sorry," and the other person says, "I forgive you." And the first person knows that they don't deserve to be forgiven for what they've done. No sin deserves to be forgiven. But it's the extension of mercy that the second person offers to says, your relationship, our relationship is more important, so I am going to forgive you. That's what mercy is. It's a willingness to extend forgiveness for somebody who has caused an offense. It's an acknowledgement that something wrong was done. There was an injustice accomplished, but that the relationship is more important, and we can put that injustice in the past and right the relationship to move forward. So it's a specific kind of grace that is extended to us as sinners. In that sense, we need both grace and mercy, because without grace we can do nothing good, and once we have done anything wrong, without mercy we cannot remain in God's good graces. We cannot remain in relationship with Him. So we depend on both of them, and they both are a result of God's love for us. God loves us so much that He gives us all the grace that we need to do what is right. But when we refuse His grace, when we refuse to cooperate with His grace, then He extends us the grace of mercy that allows us to be reconciled and to start over again. Perhaps the best example to understand the difference between grace and mercy is that of our Blessed Mother, Mary. Consider the prayer that we say, "Hail Mary, full of grace." Full of grace. She had every grace that she needed to do God's will in all things, and so she never sinned. But because she was full of grace, doesn't mean that she had every grace. She didn't need the grace of mercy because she never sinned. So she was full of grace, but because she was without sin, she never needed God's mercy except that she was preserved from the stain of original sin at her conception. That was an act of mercy, because as a child of God, she deserved, like the rest of us, to be covered by sin, but she was preserved. But she never really needed mercy during her life. She needed all the grace to do the right thing. But she didn't need mercy like we do. That to me is the best example to illustrate the difference and also the importance of each one in our lives with God. God bless, and we'll see you next time.